Hey, what's up guys? Alex here with a new video, and today we're going to be talking about the Leica M11 and my thoughts after owning it for 1 week. If you're new to the channel, I am a portrait photographer based out of Orlando, Florida, and I am primarily a Canon shooter. With that said, the last few years I've developed and grown a love for Leica, and I've had several Leica bodies. I've had a Leica M10, M10 monochrome, SL2, SL2S, Q2, Q2 monochrome, and now the M11. So I've used plenty of Leica cameras. The M11 is Leica's latest and greatest camera. And I will say this, if you're looking for a video where we go over all the specs and changes, this video is not for you. I only want to cover my first impressions after owning it and using it for a week. And I think with that said, let's kick things off. I want to kick things off with some of the changes done to the body. Most of them are extremely minor, and one of them can be considered a huge change. And we'll start there. So, for the first time in a Leica rangefinder camera, there is no base plate, no bottom plate. Leica removed the bottom plate to make room for a larger battery. And they incorporated the system they use on the Q2 and SL2 line of cameras, which is a quick release battery system and a larger battery. So the base plate and removing the base plate, I know it brings nostalgia and it just it's part of the Leica rangefinder system, but these cameras aren't large cameras, and to fit in a larger battery, it had to go, and I personally think that's a good compromise. And I say that because Leica also made changes to the way the camera meters. So the camera now meters using the sensor at all times, which means this sensor is on 24/7, which is very different from previous M digital cameras. That means the camera requires more power. And even with that change, this new battery is absolutely incredible. I used this camera for 3 days. Now I didn't use it for full days, kind of on and off. And I took about maybe 800 shots, 900 shots in those 3 days. And the battery went down to 70%, which is incredible for a Leica rangefinder camera. Previous systems, most owners would have 2 to 3 batteries just to be on the safe side. I think with the M11, you can get away with having 1 or 2 batteries and be totally okay. A few other changes they made to the body that I've really enjoyed is the new addition of a function button right next to the shutter. I really like this because I've customized this to be my live view button. So whenever I want to go to live view for whatever reason, it's right next to the shutter and it's very easily accessible. Another change they made, they removed the live view button from the back and added a function button. This button is customizable and you can make it whatever you want. For me, I have it set for a quick menu item that I use a lot, and that is the format memory card. My style, I like to go out, I like to shoot, I like to come home, import the photos, and every time I go out, I like having a fresh, clean start on my memory card. So I format every single day. And just having that button customizable to go to the format menu, I can quickly format, makes things a little easier. There's a few more changes to the camera, some cosmetic ones that are very minor as far as how the rangefinder looks, but overall, this is still an M body and it's just a joy to use, and I really like the physical changes. Moving on to the sensor of the camera, and for this I'm gonna pull out my iPad because I have some notes. Okay, I'll be playing images I've taken with this camera, and I will also include some DNG files in the description below for you to download and play with yourself so you can see a little bit of what I'm talking about. The new M11 has a 60 megapixel sensor, which is insane for a rangefinder camera. The first question I had was, can you focus accurately, or can you nail focus at 60 megapixels with a rangefinder camera? When you get to this level of megapixels, you have to be spot on, because the more megapixels you add, the more critical focus is, because you will see when you miss. And I'm here to say, the rangefinder still works flawlessly, and you can absolutely nail focus at 1.4 with 60 megapixels and get killer results. Will you be able to do it right away? Absolutely not. Well, if you have experience with the rangefinder, probably, but if you're like me who has been on and off, definitely requires practice, but it's doable. The image quality coming out of the 60 megapixel sensor is incredible. I have said this before in previous videos, but I think Leica has the best color science out of any camera. The DNG files that come out of Leica cameras are just so punchy and vibrant and so easy to edit that I love them. And the M11 is no different. The files are punchy, they're vibrant, and they are easy to edit. I am loving the image quality of the M11. The M11 also introduced triple resolution technology, which means you can shoot at the full resolution of 60 megapixels, you can shoot at medium resolution, which is 36 megapixels, and small resolution, which is 18 megapixels. Here's where I want to talk about something that not many people have mentioned. So in Leica's advertising and in their website, everywhere they say that if you shoot in the medium quality, which is 36 megapixels, you get increased dynamic range. You go from 14 stops to 15 stops of dynamic range, and you get better low light capabilities. That totally makes sense. But Leica had a podcast or a video interview, and they have it on their channel. I'm linking it below in the description, where they interview the director of product. His name is Jesko. I can't pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to try. But it's an incredible interview, and every time you hear someone who's worked on the camera talk about it, it's just always fascinating to me. But I wrote this down on my iPad because I wanted to make sure that I quoted him accurately, because this is super important. So when talking about the increased dynamic range and ISO capabilities going down to lower resolutions, he said, going to a lower resolution in camera does increase dynamic range and lower noise. But if you capture at 60 megapixels, large DNG, and downsize in Lightroom, you can achieve a very similar result. Downsizing to a lower resolution does not provide any magic that you cannot see in 60 megapixels. If you are shooting in 60 megapixels, you are capturing and storing everything the sensor sees. The advantage of shooting in medium DNG is that you get the dynamic range increases and better ISO straight out of camera. I thought that was incredibly interesting because I plan on shooting at 60 megapixels 100% of the time. I want to take advantage of the resolution, the cropping capabilities, and knowing that the increased dynamic range and better ISO and lower resolutions can be achievable by doing the same thing in post with Lightroom makes it a no-brainer for me to always be shooting in 60 megapixels. Now, yes, there's a benefit of shooting smaller files if you shoot at 36 or 18, but you're not gonna miss out on anything if you shoot exclusively in the higher resolution mode, and that is good to know. And that's something that not many people have mentioned, and again, I'm linking the interview below because it is extremely insightful. With that said, I think it's a perfect segue to talk about high ISO. Traditionally, I'm never really in environments or settings where I push my ISO past 3200. I tested this camera at ISO 3200 and I found the files to be very useful. Detail is still there, color fidelity is still there. You do get some noise, but it's not noise that ruins an image or is even noticeable unless you are pixel peeping at 200%. I would say that ISO 3200 is very similar to the M10 at 3200, except for the fact that you're getting 60 megapixels and not 24, which means if you were to downsample to 24 megapixels, you'd get a way cleaner image. I also haven't really pushed the dynamic range of the camera. I did take a portrait and accidentally underexpose it 2 stops. I shot this portrait at ISO 64, and I'll put it up here, and I was able to recover it 2 full stops and not get any noise or artifacts in the image, which tells me you can probably get away with underexposing this camera 3 to 4 stops and still be able to recover all the detail. I can't compare it to the M10R because I never used that camera, but overall, I think from an image quality perspective, color perspective, noise, and dynamic range, I am really liking the Leica M11 and super impressed so far. The last thing I want to talk about is live view. And this is something that might not be too popular with rangefinder cameras. I do use live view from time to time when shooting wide open with my 50 Summilux. Again, I'm still not a pro with the rangefinder, so when I know that I want to get a shot and be tack sharp, I enable live view. Now, when using live view with the M10 monochrome, it was always interesting because you're punching in 4 to 8 times, and what you don't realize is when you punch in that close, the micro jitters holding the camera are amplified, which means you're trying to get critical focus and the image is just bouncing up and down. So it makes it really, really hard. Now the M11 does not have in-body image stabilization, so it's not gonna stabilize your image, but it does have stabilization on the live view mode, which means when you punch in, you're seeing a stabilized image. Now this sounds like something small on paper, but it is incredibly useful because now when you're punching in, the image is just steady and acquiring focus is so much easier, and you know you're hitting it because the camera's not bouncing up and down. Those micro jitters can be wild. So the new live view stabilization mode is actually extremely useful. I don't know if this works with the new VisoFlex. I'm actually getting that in next week. It just shipped today, so super excited for that. But if it does, it'll make the live view implementation just so much better. So those are my thoughts on the Leica M11. I'm really enjoying my experience, and I think Leica really has a winner here. With that said, I plan on doing more videos on the Leica M11 in the future, including the new VisoFlex that I do get in next week. So I am super excited for that. If you have any questions or anything you want to see on the Leica M11, please drop it in the comments below. Feel free to add me on Instagram and send me a DM there. I love talking to you guys. And also, if you want to edit like I do sell my presets. I'm including a link down below to my website and my editing tutorial on my channel. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. As always, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one, guys. Peace.